Their nieces and nephews, and it's like, yeah, they're like.
All right, Deb and Ted, we're back on.
Still got a lot to cover.
Okay.
We still kinda have a lot to cover, don't
Also
we?
look at it this way.
Yes, and this is the last
They
one.
don't need to be dated. If they can
I'm,
afford to date, they can afford to.
I'm not worried about pay. We had a lot to
My
cover,
mom's got to the point where she can tell what I owe.
so I'll try
Section
to
12,
ask any questions.
the chaplain's actions during a misdemeanor stop. So we've gone from domestic violence to a misdemeanor stop.
Head
Read
on.
the first line of the first sentence of that, please. Traffic stop.
The misdemeanor traffic stop will be one of the most dangerous activities in which the chaplain will participate. So have you head on with it.
Jim alluded to that. I'm here to tell you it's absolutely true. I have stopped people, and while I'm talking to the driver, the passengers in the back are bailing out of the vehicle. So now, you have to deal with the driver and the passengers, who preferably would stay in the vehicle, but didn't, okay? Dangerous. You can't assume when you do a traffic stop, even if it's Granny that ran the red light, what is gonna happen, because you don't know. You've noticed how when an officer stops a vehicle, the way he approaches that vehicle, does he just walk right up and turn to him and, hey, give me your wallet? No. Why?
Well, he's observing.
protect
As he walks
himself.
up, and he's also protecting himself as well. He's making sure that there's no good, he has a good angle at the perp. And then but the person in the driver's seat doesn't necessarily have a good angle at him.
If he walks up and stands behind the door frame of the driver's door, if the guy's gonna shoot him, now he's gotta try to
We've got to shoot through the, most likely.
turn
through
and
the frame of
twist
the
to do
door.
it, right? It gives the officer time to deal with the situation, right? Very dangerous. Okay, so the next sentence, it says, although misdemeanors are generally non-threatening and straightforward, they should never really be considered routine, because they aren't. Once chaplain loses respect for the misdemeanor traffic stop, she is likely to get hurt or place the officer in a possible position of danger. Don't do it. What the chaplain is in a situation like that is what? An extra set of eyes and ears. He's gonna be watching the movement in the vehicle, watching for weapons, watching for what's going on. Are they trying to get rid of contraband? What's going on? And the officer's focused on the driver, right? So the chaplain is the extra set of eyes and ears. It may be a mandate of the agency which chaplain is serving that the class be taught in part by an experienced patrol officer. A good idea, it is obviously a good idea to see the chaplain's role from the eyes of the officer, but for this topic, it's extremely important that the chaplain's role be seen from the eyes of experienced chaplains, okay? So if you have experienced chaplains in any department you're associated with, use them, rely on them, talk to them, pick their brain. Where to positions oneself and why, we just kind of touched on that. Oh, she needs in. When the chaplain exits the patrol car, she is advised to walk cautiously to the right rear corner of the car. Whether day or night, the chaplain will have a relatively good view of the interior of the car, okay? This is also considered a safe position. It's never wrong to alert the officer of any suspicious movement, or the sighting of any type of weapon. And trust me, if you see a weapon, what needs to be coming out of your mouth is weapon, weapon, weapon. because that officer needs to know right now. While reading the driver's license and or vehicle registration, the chaplain is observing the occupants of the vehicle. The officer is focused on the driver. Where not to be positioned and why. Read the first sentence for me, please.
The chaplain should never position him or herself behind the officer at a misdemeanor stop.
Go ahead.
Alright. The chaplain is not in an effective position to see what is going on inside the car. The officer is not able to see where the chaplain is and what he or she is doing. If the officer has to make a quick retreat, the possibility of stumbling over the chaplain is extremely high.
Okay, so you don't wanna be a stumbling block to that officer. Plus, if you're where you're supposed to be, then that officer knows that. And he knows where to look for you if you're where you're supposed to be. If you're trying to follow him, he doesn't know that. He may stumble into you, then you both end up getting hurt. Can you look in the car? This is kind of important. What's the first word say?
Absolutely.
Ah, okay. So whether day or night, look in the car.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I imagine, for the most part, is a chaplain allowed to carry a siren?
Depends on the department. Okay, and so even if, let's say I have a concealed carry, the department may say, well, that's fine, but only sworn officers
Right.
should carry. Because if you're going to carry, in that role, it's gonna be open carry.
Right.
So they want you to be sworn,
It makes sense.
mostly. Now,
Makes sense.
not all departments are gonna abide by that,
Right.
you know? Some departments, especially if you're former Leo, may say, okay, we're gonna grandfather you in, you can carry. We're gonna swear you in, you're all good. It just depends on the department and what their rules are on that policy.
Yeah.
But I can tell you from an officer standpoint, if I'm gonna have a chaplain riding with me, you better believe I want him to be armed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cause if it gets down and dirty, I want backup
Right.
right there. Cause if you have to call for backup, they may be 15 minutes away. And when I was with the sheriff's department in Arkansas, our county was 730 square miles. We would typically have 2 officers, and you divide the county up. So if I'm in the far side of the county, I radio for help, good luck, brother, cause it's gonna be an hour before they can get to me. And I've had my blue light shot off. That wasn't fun. Yeah, so you get out in these remote areas, you do not know what you may roll up on. You go to serve a warrant on some of these good old boys, you may find out you're in a big bit of trouble.
Go way out in Milton, Baker.
Out in the boonies.
Yeah.
Up in Kentucky, it was moonshiners. Those people been making moonshine, running moonshine since Davy Crockett days, okay? They ain't gonna stop. They're still doing it.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. They will shoot you and you will not be found again.
Can I tell like a little short funny about that?
Absolutely.
So where I'm from in Raven County, like it snows, you know, once or twice a year. And so they would go down this road called War Woman, and they found some moonshiners driving down that road one time because it had been like 3 or 4 inches, probably half a foot of snow, and they looked at this one building that had no snow on the roof. So they busted him a moonshine. Thinking moonshine.
Yeah, those stills typically run hot. And the smoke can be seen and the fumes carry a long way in those hills.
Yes, they do.
They do.
The reason most criminal professions are short-lived.
Yeah, detection.
So true.
All right, the rule of add 1. What is that? When approaching a car during a misdemeanor stop, the chaplain should both understand and implement the rule of add 1. Someone read the next line.
This is simple formula that should be applied at all stops. It simply means that you always assume that at least one more person is in the vehicle, or the violator's vehicle, than what you are able to see.
The most violent shootout to date was the Miami-Dade shootout involving the FBI. And they had a driver that was visible, but the three other perps with fully automatic weapons were laying down in a prone position when the officers rolled up on them and they commenced firing. It was a lengthy firearm battle. These guys were wounded, lethally wounded numerous times and kept shooting. A lot of the officers, FBI, local got shot. It was bloody. It was bad. So you never assume just because all you see is one person's silhouette in the driver's seat that vehicle's empty.
Wasn't it like something like 1,200 some rounds were expelled or
Absolutely.
something like that? Yeah.
Because they had numerous magazines, they had numerous weapons, AKs, they were just slapping mags.
So that was a setup.
No, it was an unfortunate set of circumstances that they were about to be caught and they weren't gonna be taken alive.
Suicide by
So
call.
you don't think that they deliberately drew the cops in to try and
No.
massacre them?
No, they were trying, they
They were
wanted
trying
to
to get
leave,
away.
Yeah, they wanted to.
they wanted to leave
They
and
got
not be
caught.
caught.
They got caught is what happened.
But because the officers rolled up on them, well, we gotta go down a blaze of glory, and they did. So the rule of Ad 1 is never, ever, ever assume, always assume that there may be at least one more person in that vehicle. What is a routine stop? First sentence.
There's that.
Absolutely no such thing.
Amen. Who is always in charge at the scene?
Police officer.
Police officer.
Now, it references in the next paragraph that this could be problematic, say for someone my age and I'm riding with a younger officer, okay? So we come up on a scene and the people are middle-aged, so who are they gonna gravitate to?
Usually the older person.
Right, but who should they gravitate to?
The officer.
The officer. So as it explains in here, if that does happen and you can't focus their attention on the younger officer, then you get back in the vehicle and take yourself out of the equation. Because what's got to be most effective is that officer's in charge of that scene at all times. What to do if subject continue, yeah, well, we just talked about that. Can the chaplain talk with a second subject if the officer's busy with another? What's first line say?
Unless directed otherwise by the patrol officer, the chaplain may talk and visit with occupants of the vehicle.
Okay, you don't want to take the focus off the officer, right? So if you can engage the other occupants of the vehicle without drawing the attention away from the officer, that's fine. But if it ever becomes a problem in the focus, he's losing focus because of your involvement, shut up. Can the chaplain's action during a felony stop? Okay, what's the first line of that say?
The felony stop is a police action which takes place when occupants of a car are known to be armed or are known by officers to have outstanding warrants.
These stops are
Arrest warrant.
dangerous, often very time consuming and are carried out with precision. Chaplains are advised to safely leave the scene of a felony stop. Ain't always gonna happen. If they are not trained in such stops, or if they are not yet confident in their abilities to do so precisely as ordered and or to respond to emergency situations. So what you would do is you would stay in the car and take cover as much as possible. But you would follow the officer's lead, because before that happens, he's gonna be comfortable with you or not, right? So if he feels like you're too green and he's rolling up on a felony situation, yeah, he ain't gonna want you to do anything, stay in the car. stay safe. And he's calling for backup. Where not to be positioned, very important. Someone read that for me, that paragraph.
This is basically addressed in the segment above. The chaplain should not be anywhere in front of the rear bumper of the patrol car in which she was riding. Although common sense should tell the chaplain to keep low, all too often the chaplain wants to see what is going on and will risk bodily harm by advancing forward. If you feel you must see what is going on, get farther, much further back, and find some cover to protect yourself as you observe.
Common sense, safety, all the above, yeah. But you have to know your limitations. So you're going to be doing that self-assessment before you ever get in the car to do a ride-along. You've got to ask yourself, am I comfortable with this? And go through the what-if scenarios. What if we come upon an armed felony situation? Okay, what am I gonna do? What if the officer's being overpowered? What am I gonna do? And if you can't safely say, I'm gonna back him up and help him or her, stay home, go home. Don't get in the car and go on that ride. Don't, because you're gonna do more harm. When can the chaplain approach the felony vehicle?
Under no circumstances.
Thank you. Never, ever, 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 ever. Normally, this will be given after the perpetrators have been apprehended, cuffed, and are on their way to jail, okay? Still doesn't mean the vehicle's safe. Someone or something dangerous is in the trunk of the car. We see that on the movie. So they've gotten the occupants of the car out, they're cuffed, they're in the cruiser, they're heading to jail, and the trunk opens and the dude raises up with a shotgun. What you gonna do? Well, you're the chaplain, you're out there rubbernecking, checking it out, what's going down.
You go end up dead, more than likely.
You're right in line of
You're
fire.
a hostage.
So a lot of this is common sense and being cautious. So the operative word is caution all the time. Never lose your guard. Police officers over time, if they get apathetic and they don't train, they don't stay familiar with their weapons, they don't stay sharp, they get dull, apathetic, that's when you're gonna get hurt and get other people hurt, okay? It's like, we had in-service every year where you have to requalify with your weapons, self-defense tactics, all these scenarios, but it can't be once a year. You're not gonna be proficient with a gun if you're only going to the range once a year, right? No, you need to be going once a month or more. So if you're going to have to use these tools in the performance of your job, then you better be proficient with them. Just like knowledge. Knowledge is the tool of the chaplain. So knowing the resources to plug in to different situations, knowing the medical personnel we can refer people to if we need to, these are our tools. And most importantly, knowing God's word.
Amen.
And how to address that situation. So we're going to use our tools and be as professional as possible, just like we expect those officers to be as professional as they possibly can with the training they've got.
How do you know? This is what I'm sitting here thinking, and I may have missed the mark. So, the chaplain never approaches a felony vehicle, but how do they know whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony?
Because the officer will announce it, because he'll get let's say he runs the license plate and it comes back with
So the
warrants.
chaplain will hear it on the radio.
Or the officer will say, stay in the car.
Okay,
Somebody stop.
okay.
Believe me, radio's gonna be telling them, this vehicle comes back to potentially armed and dangerous subjects, advise proceed with caution. So they do the best job they can to warn the officer as much as possible, and the officer in turn will, keep that chaplain as safe as possible.
Cause they get your information, then go back to their car.
absolutely.
That's the part I forgot.
So they always run the plate, and the plate may come back with a hit or no, but that, or they may say, well, this vehicle was identified in a drive-by shooting 3 hours ago. The occupants may be armed and dangerous, approach with caution.
Okay.
How about never let your eyes leave the subjects? Oh, I'm sorry, C, what should the chaplain do if a felon flees from the scene?
Do
Nothing.
nothing.
Nothing,
Observe.
exactly.
Get back in the car.
Get on your feet and run.
No. And the next one, never let your eyes leave the subject. Kind of self-explanatory, but go ahead and read the first line.
Although the chaplain is to remain well behind the officer and the vehicle, the actions of the felons should be observed at all times.
Why? Because we don't know what they're gonna do, ever. And it may be that felony situation where there's a warrant and this guy's getting ready to go do some serious time. He ain't liking that idea, alright? So when the realization, hey, you're about to go to jail hits, he may buck. And then it might get ugly. He may pull a weapon. So you've got this perfectly peaceful, what you thought was misdemeanor stop that quickly turns into a felony assault stop. And it can happen from 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds.
You never
When
know
things begin
someone's
to happen,
mindset,
they have necessary
and you
drugs.
never know what they're capable of.
You don't.
You know, I know that, like, even people who, cause I come from drug addiction, people who are on drugs don't know what they're about to do. Sometimes, you know, like, sometimes they're just, they flip out and they go crazy,
Yeah.
you know, so.
Restraining a little, probably 5'5" female, weighed about 130 pounds, took every ounce of energy I had and a lieutenant that was with me, and we were trying to restrain this woman on the floor, and a psych doctor walks over and goes, "Do y'all have to be so rough?" And I looked up at her, I said, "Well, no, ma'am, I'll get up and you can show me how to do it, okay?" "Oh, no. Then you go do your job, I'll do mine."
Yeah.
How about that? But it took everything we had not to hurt this girl. And we didn't want to hurt her
Why?
because she was on
PCP?
PCP.
Well, you think you're a superhero when you're
Yeah.
on some of them drugs.
Mm-hmm.
You,
And she
I
was
broke a
extremely
guy's
strong.
wrist because I couldn't get pain compliance because he was so drunk. He didn't feel it. And he was struggling. The more he struggled, I just added a little pressure and finally it went snap. But I had to get him under control.
You gotta restrain him.
Gotta restrain him. So you don't know at any point what you're gonna have to deal with. Women? Oh yeah. Can they be unpredictable? Can they be strong? Can they be out of their head on drugs? You better
yeah.
believe it. And can they fight like a man? Oh, you better believe it. And if you had never been hit by a woman that throws a mean punch, trust me when I tell you.
And you never know who it might be in that car. It could be the top surgeon, top surgeon in your city. It could be a
I don't think
pastor.
I'd ever seen
You know, you
a
never
human
know.
being as drunk as the top neurosurgeon was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I just looked at him like, oh my God, I hope you're not doing surgery tomorrow.
we
You won't
had-
make it.
He was curled up in the corner.
It was bad.
We had one that he couldn't do surgery unless he was drunk.
Oh my
His
God.
hands wouldn't quit shaking, but he was a top surgeon around here. I'm not giving names.
How important are the hands of the felon?
very important.
Okay,
You wanna make sure they ain't nothing in them.
Do not take your hands off your eyes.
Not to mention the fact how those hands were trained too.
what about concealable weapons?
Yep.
Mhm.
There was the Afro picks. They hurt. You get stabbed with one of those, they hurt.
Brass knuckles.
Okay. Had one that had taken razor blades and curved them and put them under his nails.
Goodness.
Oh yeah, and big chunks of flesh come out.
And a woman with stiletto nails.
But you look at the hands, and you're really not gonna notice those razor blades unless you're looking closely, okay? Or a small blade that long can be palmed, right? And they can cut you quick, or in places you wouldn't imagine. Big hairdo, oh yeah. Seen them at jail, you wouldn't imagine some of the stuff we had come out of making people take their weaves off. And the stuff that came out of them. I'm not taking my weave off. Well, I'm afraid you are. One way or another, that weave's coming off. You can do it or I can. That's my hairdo, yeah. I paid big money for this. Well, you're getting ready to take it off. Unbelievable stuff. Drugs, weapons, unbelievable. And times that in jail they find stuff that they scratch their head and go, how did this even get in? And amazing.
So Saint Redemption does it, how it gets in.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I don't know anything about jail, but I hear stories on how I end up with people that tell me stories and I'm just like, you're kidding me.
I know.
In jail, drugs are more easily to get to than out of jail.
Well, in some cases, they
Drugs,
make
cell
them
phones.
in prison.
Yeah.
And then there's those that are not as ethical as they should be, that
Yeah,
are in positions of leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the prison that my sister's in right now, she told me that there's more prisoners than there is officers at this point,
It's
and the prisoners
dangerous.
are running. But it's Alto State Prison in Georgia, so it's the biggest women's prison in Georgia. These women are lifers, so they have nothing to lose at this point. Like she said, they were selling a litter of cats in there at one time.
Dude, what?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. They had a litter of cats in there at one time, and Ashley was like, she said, I'm allergic. I hope my bunkmate doesn't try to go get
What
one of these
in the
cats.
world, bro?
Like, could you imagine? But there's so many, jailers.
I've heard
and all
stories from Brian working at the jail.
that. Ugh, it's crazy.
Oh, they're many.
Brian Hanlon works at the jail.
He
Yeah.
used to, he's retired.
He's retired from there.
The next section is the chaplain's understanding of the Fourth Amendment. This is very, very critical. We're gonna hit the highlights, but I want you to read it and reread it and reread it because you have to understand this. And
I
especially
was
if you do,
amazed reading this.
it's important.
I
Well, it's
was.
actually critical. It's part of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Maybe part of the test.
Could be.
No, I think so.
What does the first line of this say?
The community service chaplain and especially the law enforcement chaplain must have a very comprehensive understanding of the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which addresses the citizens' rights regarding unlawful search and seizure.
Okay, so kind of important. So if you're in a chaplain role and you're riding with an officer, then it's kind of important that the chaplain understands this because you're gonna be pulled into this. You're gonna see stuff, right? So your understanding of what can and can't be done is highly important. In the bottom of the page, constitutional law, the Fourth Amendment reads as what?
The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, in particular describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
Okay.
Unless you're
So-
in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Right.
Way
Yeah.
different situations
Yeah.
here,
Right.
and the first section under this is search and seizure, and it says issue. So when can the government intrude upon its citizens' privacy by effecting a search or seizure?
Probable cause.
When the government has probable cause to believe that a person has committed a crime or possesses contraband, instrumentalities of a crime, or fruit of a crime, and the agents comply with the warrant requirements of the Fourth Amendment. So the courts begin an analysis of a search and seizure inquiry by asking, does the person complaining have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the things searched or seized? B, to analyze a search and seizure situation, ask the following questions. What's number one?
Is a government agent or agency involved?
Okay, why? The Fourth Amendment.
Applies only to the actors of a governmental agency, police, deputies, IRS, INS, Marshal Service, FBI, etc., or someone acting at their behest.
What's the next sentence?
Its purpose is to limit governmental activity. Therefore, only searches and seizures initiated, ordered by the government violate the fourth. A private citizen cannot violate the fourth.
Okay. Was there a search or seizure? Was the search seizure conducted within the curtilage of a home, inside a fence, in a personal business or automobile, in an office, in a field? Go to the court's threshold question. Is there a legitimate, reasonable expectation of privacy? Okay, was there a warrant? Was there an exception to the warrant requirement? Somebody read that first paragraph.
The courts recognize certain special circumstances where it may not be feasible or possible to obtain a warrant before conducting a search and seizure. Each exception has certain elements that must be present in order to maintain the integrity of the general rule. Some exceptions to these elements are:
Someone read A.
Consent. It must be voluntarily and knowingly given. The scope of the search is limited by the permission granted. You must stop immediately if the person withdraws their consent.
Wow. How about B?
Plain view.
Plain smell.
Smell.
You must be legitimately on the premises, observe the object in plain view, smell, or during a lawful inventory search.
And that would come into play, obviously, if you smell,
Marijuana.
or,
Alcohol.
or if someone's manufacturing meth, are there gonna be telltale odors?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What about
They got
C?
ether going on too, that's another one.
C, the automobile.
You must have probable cause to search a recently moving or temporarily stopped vehicle. What is probable cause?
Sorry, I've just experienced a lot of this as well.
If
I'm
you-
Googling.
If you just robbed a liquor store and you're going down the road and it comes over to the radio that a red Ford Taurus was just seen robbing a liquor store and you're driving one, I've got probable cause to stop you and search that vehicle. Right? Because,
That case before.
Have you?
Yeah, it took me 9 months in jail to do it.
I mean, because I have been involved in that lifestyle for a very long time, you know, even growing up, you know, my parents are still in addiction, you know, so I grew up with the wrong mentality towards law enforcement and
Sure.
things like that. You know, but I think maybe just where I'm from, they would use anything for
Yeah.
probable cause. You know, like they could see something and then they'd be like, all right, well that's probable cause, we're gonna search the vehicle. You know, I always gave them consent because I just, you know, I knew if I had something or I didn't have something, you know, but my mom was crazy. She was crazy. You know, so she would like just go off and like not allow them, you know, but they would always come up with a reason for probable cause to still search the vehicle.
okay, smell. I pull a vehicle over and the strong odor of alcohol comes out the window as soon as the driver rolls the window down. Do I have probable cause, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Window comes down, I detect the odor of marijuana. Do I have probable cause to
Yes.
search that vehicle?
Yep. And temporary stop. Be careful going through Gulf Breeze. I
Yeah.
promise you, they will stop you for anything, including a broken taillight.
Yep.
And my son was honest and told them he had stuff in the car, and they tossed the car. He almost, yeah, it was, yeah. it was
So I
not
used
good.
to work at the city of Gulf Breeze,
Alberta,
and
he smells
they
bad
really,
too.
one of their,
Thank you, that would-
revenue streams is the stoplights.
Uh-huh, my brother got
They
a ticket.
pride themselves on
Mhm.
their
But they,
stoplight.
but that's
fees.
how they catch a lot of people drinking and driving,
Mhm.
and
They
that
take out
is
off the
because
beach, yeah.
of just stupid little things. A broken tail light, his tail light wasn't working, so they pulled him right outside of ACC.
Oh, no.
Right
That's where he
outside of
works.
where- Oh, no.
Yeah,
My son-in-law's
Yeah, she is.
business.
What about D? Search incident
Oh,
to
Lordy.
an arrest. Someone read that.
the arrest must be legal with either, probable cause or warrant. This search must be, contemporaneous with the stop and, or arrest. You must search the area within the arrestee's wingspan. That could last, Corey's tall, yeah. If the arrest is from a car, you must search the passenger's compartment and its contents after removing the passengers.
Yeah, do you wanna try to conduct a search of the interior of a vehicle with people sitting there? No.
That would be good.
No. How about E?
Stop.
You can't actually start pulling the car apart though without a warrant, right?
As far as physically
Right,
removing
like
seats? No.
disengaging the dash and stuff
No,
like
no, no,
that.
Yeah, but they sure can toss the car pretty bad.
yeah.
Right, but I'm just saying, in order to start
Dismantling? No,
dismantling, you
absolutely
have to
not.
have a warrant.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be done in an impound lot.
I'd have won one of those in court too.
Yeah, you know, not your
I've
local
seen those
chop
on the
shop.
side of
that
the
you
interstate.
can see in the
You'd be
impound lot.
surprised what you could hide on a motorcycle.
Oh, no, I wouldn't, actually. What about stop and frisk, number E?
Not allowed
Yeah.
anymore,
Yeah,
not in New York anyways.
Okay, someone read that.
When you have,
E,
when you have a reasonable articulable suspicion that a person is involved in criminal activity, you may stop and frisk. This is without PC. If you believe the person is armed or dangerous, you may do a brief pat down of the outer clothing.
okay, a good example of that would be, it's 89 degrees and 90% humidity, guy's wearing an overcoat. Do you wanna stop and frisk? Yeah, probably.
Wires hanging out.
Or guy wearing a t-shirt and you see
a bulge.
a big protrusion on his side. Probably wanna check that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about being observant and what looks unusual. That would give you probable cause to go, let me talk to you, partner. Come here just a minute. What about emergency hot pursuit, number F? You may make a warrantless search and seizure in a hot pursuit of a dangerous suspect. The scope of S&S flows with the situation. Not gonna happen a lot. What about G? Evanescent evidence.
You may search for and seize evidence which will dissipate or is likely to disappear before a warrant can be obtained.
What would be an example of that?
Somebody put drugs in their mouth trying to swallow it.
Or in a toilet,
Control it.
or Jell-O with drugs in it. Is that gonna hold up till you get it to the station, put it in the freezer? Nah, it's gonna melt. What about special emergencies, fires, children in trouble, etc.? What happens if you violate the constitutional constraints of the Fourth Amendment? What does that line say?
Everything
The
gets thrown
opposing
out.
party will file a motion to suppress if the judge finds a constitutional violation. The fruits of the illegal search cannot be admitted.
Absolutely, because we're gonna talk about what to touch.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Well, that's a good rule of thumb. Read the paragraph of number 1.
The chaplain accompanies an officer to a scene. The nature of the call was a loud noise. call from a neighbor. When the chaplain and officer arrive at the scene, the officer and chaplain enter the house, wherein the officer explains the nature of the call and asks the resident to turn the volume of the noise down. While inside the house, the officer requests to use the bathroom facility. The occupant gives permission, and the officer enters the bathroom. While in the bathroom, the officer takes a snoop in the medication cabinets where he sees an illegal non-prescription drug. He confiscates the drug, arrests the occupant, and takes him to jail. At the ensuing arraignment, the drugs, i.e. the evidence, is suppressed and the case is lost. The occupant of the house goes free.
Amen.
Why? Read the
Because
next
it was
paragraph.
snooping.
The reason the drugs could not be used as evidence is the case is that they were obtained by violating the occupant's Fourth Amendment constitutional rights. Did the officer need a warrant to go to the bathroom? No, he only needed consent from the occupant, but the consent was generally understood to use the bathroom to utilize the toilet facility. The occupant had a reasonable expectation of privacy. The privacy includes the medicine cabinet. There is no legitimate reason the officer needed to look into the medicine cabinet. Consequently, anything found during his snoop was considered fruit game from the forbidden tree.
And buddy, they use that in court a lot, let me tell you.
You're not supposed to
That's
open
why-
anything without a warrant, right?
You can't, and you've got to be uber careful. Okay, what you look in or what you bring to the officer's attention, because you don't wanna get in that fruit of the forbidden tree subject. How about number 2?
The chaplain responds with an officer to a domestic violence call. Upon entering the home, the argument apparently has ceased and things seem to go back to normal. The chaplain asks the occupant if he can use the telephone. The phone is in the kitchen, he leaves the occupants and the officer in the parlor and enters the kitchen. In the kitchen, the chaplain notices an expensive boombox. This catches the chaplain's attention because in roll call earlier in the day, the shift sergeant read a list of stolen items in the neighborhood. Because of this suspicion, the chaplain lifts the boombox and identifies the serial number. The chaplain returns to the officer and they both leave. In the patrol car, they identify the serial number as belonging to the stolen merchandise. They return to the house, arrest the occupants, and take them to jail. The arraignment, the serial number is suppressed, and the occupants are released from the home free.
Why?
The chaplain had obtained the serial number in a fashion which violated the occupant's constitutional right, namely the Fourth Amendment. The chaplain was given permission to use the phone. There was still expectation of privacy that the chaplain would not lift or move about personal items and belongings. Had the chaplain been able to read the serial number without moving or lifting the boombox, the evidence would have stood up in court. Because the chaplain had to alter the position or circumstances to gain the information, it also is considered fruit of forbidden tree. The evidence is tainted and therefore cannot be used in court. The argument might be given that the chaplain is a private citizen, not a police officer. This really doesn't matter because the chaplain, even though a volunteer, is working under color of law. He or she, in fact, is actually an agent of the law in this situation.
Okay, but above and beyond that, even though we're talking about the Fourth Amendment, is also the fact that you don't wanna contaminate a crime scene, right? Anything you touch, you're gonna leave DNA, right? So you don't wanna be touching anything unless there's a real good reason to do so. If you got probable cause, okay, but I would probably bring it to the officer's attention and not do it myself. I mean, it just makes more sense, because then it's on him. So the Fourth Amendment, like all of them, are very important, but for this scenario, this is the Fourth Amendment, and we need to know as much about it as possible. People have a reasonable expectation to privacy. That's the law. The chaplain should not touch or move anything, but he's free to take notes, record his sightings or actions, as long as it doesn't violate the occupant's reasonable expectation of privacy. So what is reasonable expectation of privacy? Reasonable expectation of privacy is actually a legal matter which has been argued for many years. Question: if a person parks their car on a public street and leaves doors unlocked, do they have a reasonable expectation that the car will not be searched by a private citizen or an officer of the law?
No.
No.
What?
I know, isn't that scary? Lock
Read
doors.
the answer.
Most courts have upheld searches of private vehicles which were left unlocked and unattended on public streets, lots, and other public property.
Okay, what's the flip side?
Public property, though, that's just it. That's
Public. So if a person leaves his or her car unlocked in their own driveway, does he or she have a reasonable expectation that the vehicle will not be searched by a private citizen or officer?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, that's
See,
Why?
private property,
it's on your property.
On your property.
Same as your house or.
private property.
That brings us to weapons handling and familiarization, and really, the rest of this, I'm gonna let you read, okay?
I have a question. So if the car is locked and on public property,
Then,
Then you have a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Okay.
They'd have to break into it.
Cause you've safeguarded your vehicle at that point.
Mhm.
But even on your property, on your own property, locked or unlocked, you still have a reasonable expectation of privacy, because it's on your property. Does that mean leave your purse sitting out in an unlocked car?
no,
don't be stupid.
not supposed to leave it locked.
Unless you're trying to get an
Hey, I've
insurance.
had somebody steal my mom's, handicap sticker.
Oh,
That
yeah?
was the only thing that was left in my, they had already hit my car once before and took all my CDs and things of it. The only thing I had left in there was my mom's handicap sticker, and they stole her little placket. Like, you've got to be kidding.
I do wanna say about this, the section 15 here, weapons handling and familiarization. If you were to decide you want to be a chaplain in a law enforcement agency, and that agency did allow the chaplains to be armed, then yeah, you absolutely wanna get some training, and you wanna understand weapons. Handling the different types of weapons, shotguns, Remington 870s, your law enforcement go-to. I've shot combat courses with them, they're a good weapon, but you gotta know how to handle them. When I started, we were using revolvers, I had to go through 9mm training and conversion, that was fun. You need to know the difference between these weapons, you need to know how to handle them, how to safeguard them if you come upon them at a crime scene. The last section 16, the chaplain and the victim witness program. Familiarizing the chaplain with the victim witness coordinator. And again, we talked about this earlier. A small community may not have one of these, but what you do is you become familiar with what the agency you work with has that could be comparable to this, okay? So it goes back to working with the resources of the agency you're associated with. State, federal benefits, you wanna know as much as possible about what's available to you in all regards. So state, federal, local, county, municipal, all of it. And it's just adding arrows to the quiver. The more tools in your toolbox, the better job you'll be able to do. The more prepared, the more knowledge that you'll have. So that concludes this section.
Don't leave it.
Fine next week, Joe.
Are you done
I am done here.
yet? Okay, so next week you have your final, and I'll have your next month's stuff, which will be weeks 9 through 12, not week 1 of October. That being said, there will be a quiz on your, book, week 9 of 12. And that'll all be in your stuff tomorrow, or next week, when you take your quiz. You'll have your syllabus, it's already done. in your curriculum, okay?
So is this the end of chaplaincy, or?
No, we have
No,
4
no,
more
no.
weeks.
After
One
this.
more, okay,
This is week 7 of 12.
okay.
So we'll have the final next week. We will not have a review.
You're not ready to.
But you will get your curriculum and your syllabus.
So we won't have a review next week.
Nope, we will not have a review.
So steady.
Means the same as we won't have.
She said it means the same as we won't.
I said we will not have a review. She said, so we won't have a review. Right, it means the same. That's the contraction for will not.
Okay, you did get me on that one. So, okay, great. Well, I won't be here week 9. So.
I'll email you the quiz.
Okay. I may be here, I don't know. I'm just driving back from.
Georgia, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean.
Did you hear that, Deb and Ted?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
No review.
No review.
I think that'll be.
Will not and
No review.
will not and won't means the same thing. That's right.